Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host. And joining me is my good friend Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing very well. Excited to talk about Khalil Mack and his potential free agency, and we'll see what ends up happening. But I don't know. Could be an interesting one here.
Yeah, very interesting. Lots of different, potential scenarios here. You've been grinding some running back draft prospect tape, and you have a new favorite. That is correct.
Yes. Unfortunately, he'll be knocked for the fact that he's 5'9". At least so says PFF. Maybe he'll be taller. Maybe he'll be shorter. But absolutely love watching him, and frankly, love watching this running back class. It's been a struggle. It's generally been the one or two guys, and then there's everybody else. This draft, it seems like it's a pretty deep class. So I expect, and I would hope the Chargers invest at some point pretty early on.
Yeah, my early impressions of this running back draft class is that it's really, really fun. Obviously, you have the headliner of Ashton Genty, who, some people have kind of speculated the Chargers might partake there. I doubt he's on the board. He shouldn't be on the board at 22, but you've got some really good depth pieces, man. And obviously, if you watched the college football national championship last night, which congratulations to your Ohio State family, by the way. Trayvon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, man, good players, very fun prospects. This is a great running back class. So I would expect the Chargers to, dip their toes in there at some point. But yeah, should be fun.
Yes.
All right. Like Tyler said, we are going to spend today's show talking about Khalil Mack and his free agency profile. Obviously, the biggest decision the Chargers have to make in terms of the players leaving the team is what Khalil Mack will do for this team, assuming he does decide to not retire and keep playing. So a lot of different ramifications here that we will dive into. Apologies for the blue tape in my background for our video audience. That frame for Rashawn Slater that I got is super heavy and proving very difficult to hang up. So that will be on the wall shortly. But yeah, that's why it looks a little wonky, and I've changed things up a little bit in the studio. So hopefully you can enjoy that. All right, let's dive into the Khalil Mack free agency profile here. I do see a couple of super chats questions. We'll get to some questions and super chats at the end of tonight's show if we have time. But like I said, the bulk of today's show is going to be dedicated towards the Khalil Mack conversation. All right, so first and foremost, from a by the numbers standpoint, Khalil Mack ranked, his rankings on the screen that we'll talk about are out of 69 qualified edge rushers. Nice. In total on the season, he registered 52 pressures, 9 sacks, 8 quarterback hits. Definitely a step down from the previous season when he had 18 sacks, but still pretty quality numbers. His pass rush productivity rating on PFF ranked 25th out of the edge rushers. His pass rush win rate was 15.1%. He had 16 run stops, 7.1 run stop percentage, which was 16th. His Pro Football Focus wins above replacement rating was 15th among all edge rushers. So pretty good standing there for the overall numbers. And then you look at his grades. His overall grade was 90.4, which I think that's supposed to say 4th.
Oh, yeah, he's not that bad. I wrote 90.4, and that just registered as 94. Yeah, so if he's 94th in the grades, PFF definitely has an issue, or don't re-sign Khalil Mack. I believe it should be 4th.
Yeah, I believe that should be 4th. Run defense, we mentioned this on the previous show. Still a very highly impactful run defender. 88 run defense grade was second best among qualified edge rushers. And then his pass rush grade was 79.9, which was 13th best. So he will turn 34 in February. He is definitely at that stage of his career where he's definitely getting up there. As a 31-year-old who hurt my knee sleeping, apparently, I can relate to how a 34-year-old might feel at some time. And he missed the 2 games with the double groin injury, which, it was really his first time being hurt since the foot injury in Chicago, to be fair for him. And then the Chargers did manage his snaps at a rate that we haven't really seen in previous years. He played essentially 44 snaps per game, which is a career low for him, and registered a snap percentage count of 57% of his snaps. So, Tyler, when you kind of take a step back and look at Khalil's season in 2024, the numbers, the film that we watch each week, where are you at in terms of Khalil and his production and what kind of play the Chargers might be able to get if they do re-sign him?
I think they'll get mostly this moving forward. I expect that, barring injuries, which is the big thing, I think that they'll get about this, at least a top 20 player. I mean, he's so consistent above, with every ranking, the grades, you name it. And so I think they're going to feel pretty good about their investment here in terms of the floor. If they get the ceiling from last year, I guess last year would not be last year, but the 2023
Last season.
Yeah, the 2023 season,
There you go.
then I think awesome. Obviously, then he's outperforming his contract. But I think he's going to just be a very solid top 20 edge rusher. And frankly, that's great. And we'll talk about his contract options and whatnot. But I have no reservations about Khalil Mack being a good edge rusher for the Chargers for at least one season, and definitely, I think, 2 seasons. Can he reach that same ceiling? I don't know. If they move on from Joey Bosa, and we'll see how they feel about Thule, how much are they going to ask Khalil Mack to play? Now, granted, it's not like that Joey Bosa was around the entire season, but hopefully they don't have to go, okay, well, we paid you the money. You're back. We didn't invest in another edge rusher, so you got to be the guy for 80% of the snaps. I hope that's the case, because I think that will ultimately sap his efficiency. But I think he'll be just fine. I feel very confident in what he's able to do. I think you pointing out either previous show or 2 shows ago, his run defense is still there. Anyone can be a designated pass rusher. To be even better, arguably, against the run right now for Khalil Mack just shows that he's got a lot left in the tank.
Yeah, there's, some edge rushers at this stage of their career, they become, a very clear designated pass rusher, or, things like that of that nature, where you're paying them, $9-10 million to, maybe give you 40 pressures and 8 sacks, and that's kind of like their best season. Khalil's not at that point. I still think he can be a starting down to down edge rusher. I think, the Chargers wisely cut back his snaps a little bit to keep him fresh for a stretch run. And then obviously the groin injuries happened, and so they didn't really have a choice. So I think if he does come back, I expect him to play well for at least one more season. I expect him to play at that similar level for at least another season. And then the Chargers will do their part and manage his snaps and keep him healthy and give him his rest days on Wednesdays that he's been accustomed to. But I think there was a lot of premature talk on Chargers fandom about him being washed when the film was still really good. The numbers were very good on a per play basis. Like, yeah, going from 18 sacks to 9, like, it hurts, right? But, when it came down to it, in a playoff game against the Ravens, against the Broncos, Khalil was still at his best when the Chargers needed him to be.
Mm-hmm.
He also got a lot of gimme sacks in 2023 that he did not get in 2024. So I still think that the high end edge rusher play is there, but the snap percentage I don't think is ever going to be back to that level, because the Chargers would want to keep him healthy. So I do think that is part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, so we'll talk about investments in edge rushers at some point, if not even today. But yeah, gotta find somebody if Joey's gone, unless they make Thule that guy. But they don't strike me as a team that wants to do that right now. Yeah. Or next year, it's clearly not Bud Dupree. Bud Dupree, they feel very good at minimum as an edge 3 for them. So yeah, gotta find another guy if they want to keep him, efficient for the next 2 years.
Yeah. I mentioned the stage of his career. I think a statistical comparison that you guys could look at is that of Zadarius Smith. And so very similar age profiles. Khalil will be 34 this year. Zadarius will be 33. Zadarius has kind of already started to be that designated pass rusher type. And he's never been the run defender that Khalil has. But from a pass rushing perspective, Khalil has him beat in pressures this season, run stop percentage, overall grade. But then you look at, his pass rush productivity, their profiles are pretty similar in that regard. And then the contract is obviously the question mark. Well, Zadarius signed a 2-year, $23 million contract with the Browns heading into this. Heading into last offseason. They gave him kind of an extension after they traded for him. So very different situations. Zadarius has been on like 8 different teams in the last few years. Former Raven also, by the way. But that was his contract, was 2 years, $23 million.
It's very difficult to find a contract or situation that's similar to where Khalil Mack is right now, because, okay, you can look at the age, and there's plenty of guys aged 32, 33, 34 that you can find that have signed a contract, but how many of them are also top 15 as both, or even top 20 as both a pass rusher and a run defender? So difficult to find. So we'll talk about some instances here, but no one's as productive, no one's as efficient, no one plays the run as much. So it's very, very, it's good for Khalil Mack. I think it'll benefit him contractually for sure.
Yeah.
But it's difficult for us to just find like, oh, that's a very obvious comparison here.
Yeah, I agree. Most of the guy, like you mentioned, it's DPR types or it's like run defender types. Like Jadeveon Clowney could potentially be like a run defense comparison, but Clowney last year had a great season for the Ravens, but he's never been the pass rusher that Khalil has been. So it is a little tricky there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, you want to take this one away in terms of contract options?
Sure. So, sorry, my computer like froze for a second there. So previously, and this is not the deal he's going to sign, signed a 6-year, $141 million contract with the Bears. Obviously, the Raiders traded him away. Signed with the Bears. Big extension, of course. Right now, his contract projection from PFF is 2 years and $22.5 million per year. He's currently their number 5 free agent overall, and their edge 1 in this upcoming free agent class, which makes sense, and also will probably make him more pricey. So they're projecting him pretty big here. 22.5 is quite a bit. Some recent comparisons. We have Von Miller, fresh off that Super Bowl run, $19 million per year, bigger overall contract. Although even PFF, so PFF pointed out Khalil Mack and Von Miller maybe having similar situations here, but obviously the length of the deal was different. But Von Miller's deal was really like a 3-year, $54 million deal or whatever it actually really was.
Yeah.
When you broke down what it really could be. Zadarius Smith, as we mentioned, $11.5 million per year. And then Matt Judon signed a 2-year, $22.5 million deal ahead of his age 32 season. So big jump. I mean, when you look at Miller, Smith, Judon, those are, $11 million, $19 million, 10.25 million or 10 point, what is that? $10.75 million per year for Judon. No, 11.25. I got this. 11.25 million a year for Judon. Khalil Mack projected at 22.5 million APY is pretty expensive.
Yeah, so his contract that he signed with the Bears at the time made him the highest paid defensive player in the league at $23.5 million. Obviously, that was ahead of the 2017 season, right? Or 2018. 2018, I think.
Yeah, ahead of the
2017. 2017, yeah. Oh. So... Sorry, 2017, $23.5 million. That was, like I said, market setting contract. And now we're, Nick Bosa is well over $30 million at his position. Myles Garrett, same kind of deal. Aaron Donald hit over $30 million. So things have changed quite a lot in terms of the edge rusher market. $23.5 million 6 years ago, and he's currently projected for 22.5. So something to keep in mind there. I will point out again that part of his pay cut did take him down to essentially a $19 million contract. So his previous contract, 23.5, the pay cut that he agreed to was $19 million essentially for this past season. And so I personally have a hard time seeing him getting more than that $19 million. Not that PFF is going to be off, and they have obviously a very strong track record when it comes to contract evaluations. But when you're looking at players and potentially like getting a pay bump, a lot of times it's like a younger player who's producing off of a career season. Those don't really apply to Khalil. And so I think we might see that number be, maybe meet in the middle of what we're looking at from the 19 and these other edge rushers like Zadarius and Matt Judon.
Yeah, so if he gets 22.5, he'd be top 10 in APY among edge rushers. He'd be right behind Max Crosby, ahead of Bradley Chubb, ahead of Hendrickson, obviously ahead of Joey if that contract sticks. So I agree with you that it is definitely somewhere in the middle. I don't think he's not signing a Matt Judon contract. He's not signing a Zadarius Smith contract. I don't think it's 11 or 10 to $11 million per year. I think that's ridiculous for what he's been able to do and his worth. And frankly, even just the pure numbers themselves, I think show that he's worth more than that. Yeah. 22.5 million and being top 10. obviously I love Khalil Mack and respect what he's able to do. That is rich for an older player. A lot of these guys are maybe there was their second contract or even like a third contract, depending on what they did, but they're all much younger when they sign these deals. Him being top 10 with an age 33 starting point contract is unlikely, I'd think.
If you had to guess, how many total pressures do you think Matt Judon had in Atlanta this year?
I don't remember being very good. 27.
Dude, 25.
Okay. All right.
Very close. Very close.
That's really sad. I only remember it being low because we talked about before the Atlanta game, their linebacker led them in pressures.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I was like, hey, can the Chargers go get Judon? That'd be great. But 25 pressures, that ain't it.
And he closed the season with 3 pressures against the Giants and Commanders in the last 2 weeks of the season. So heading into the final 2 games of the season, he had 19 pressures in 16 weeks.
I didn't realize he played that many weeks. I thought he was hurt. Jeez.
Yeah. So that kind of goes to show Khalil, for all of the people, in the fan base who think he is a little washed, like the players around him are not producing around him in terms of age are not and have not produced at the level that he has. So the Chargers are in a bit of a tricky situation here from a contract standpoint, where he took the pay cut last year coming off of his best season of his career, but he is 34. The market is what the market is in terms of the older kind of pass rushers. So there's going to have to be some kind of compromise at some point with the team and Khalil and figure out, how much does he want to be here specifically? How much does he want to keep, building with Jim Harbaugh? How long does he want to play? He's already talked about retiring twice after a Chargers season. So, that lack of long-term stability in terms of a contract, I think, does help the Chargers in terms of the overall number as well.
Yeah, they definitely don't need to go cheap here. I don't. If they walked up, he walked up and said, "Hey, it's $20 million a year or bust," they could totally afford it. It's not an issue with affording for them. It's just weighing how much value they'll get out of that contract for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think I would be comfortable with doing that and agreeing to that. I think Khalil has earned that as a Charger, but Joe Ortiz has got to figure out, how do I find space for all these other guys? So that's kind of the dilemma there. All right, before we continue, of course, I have to tell you guys about our friends over at PrizePicks, the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. If you are sick and tired of the old school method of drafting one specific team and sticking with that team and sticking with those players, daily fantasy is really the place for you, where you can pick and choose players each and every week. All you have to do is pick a stat line and go more or less than on that specific number. They have great specials coming up for the AFC NFC Championship as well as the Super Bowl. Obviously, the NBA is in full swing. Hockey's in full swing. Baseball is right around the corner. I've already seen all of the Dodgers and Padres stuff come back to the light as free agency hits. So definitely get ready for PrizePicks and baseball season and NBA season and everything under the sun. It is truly super easy to use, very user-friendly, and we cannot recommend it enough, and we're very grateful for their partnership of the show. So you guys can go to prizepicks.com/guilty. Again, that is prizepicks.com/guilty to be able to take advantage. And it does help support the show as well. So it would mean a lot to us if you go and check that out. The link to PrizePicks is in the description, but again, that is prizepicks.com/guilty. All right, potential replacements. This was kind of a big question for the fan base online. Obviously, the Chargers do have Tuli Tuipulotu, Bud Dupree, and Joey Bosa currently under contract. The Chargers obviously could decide to cut one, two, or neither of Bud Dupree and Joey Bosa and save a decent amount of change here. But in terms of free agents as that the Chargers could potentially target if Khalil decides to retire or sign somewhere else, who stands out to you, Tyler?
Can I say none of them?
Yeah, that's totally fair.
I honestly, so it's just a group of, man, I really don't know. Okay, so it's not that these guys don't stand out in certain ways. It's just I look at all of them and go, not better than Mack, not better than Mack, not better than Mack. Now they'll be cheaper than Khalil Mack, I would think.
Yeah.
but I just don't believe they're better. The one that would be intriguing is Kuntz, but he hurt himself and was out for the year.
Yeah.
He should be fine for 2025 because he hurt himself so early. But that's a player I'm going, okay, like there's something, he's building to something, and he could have been that marquee guy heading into free agency. So potential buy low, I guess, given what his expectations were for the 2024 season. But I just don't know. I mean, obviously, since 2020 and probably the day I was born, we've been talking about Reddick, but that's a whole different thing these days than it was before.
Yeah.
Great player, and then whatever the heck just happened. Don't want to do that. DeMarcus Lawrence, I don't even know if he's officially playing in 2025. He's also mulling the whole like, how much am I going to do this? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
So I really just, I'm not in love with any of these options. I want to throw it back at you. You've been doing the Edge film watch for this class. I haven't watched a single one. You put Mike Green here. This is apparently a pretty good edge rusher class.
Yeah, I love this edge rusher class. There's great options. I think for the Chargers at 22, if they wanted to move up and go get somebody, if they wanted to wait until round 2 to draft, somebody that way. Obviously the Chargers are not going to be in range to get Abdul Carter. Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M to me is like an ultra freakazoid type of like Trayvon Walker, where the film is intriguing, but the traits are like, man, this guy at 280 pounds can just turn a corner like nobody's business. Michael Pierce from Tennessee is another good one. And then I really like Mike Green from Marshall as well. Those are all kind of guys in the first round that I think would be intriguing. I talked previously about Princely Unman from Ole Miss / Florida.
Mm-hmm.
He apparently has some character red flags, so that does kind of weigh down for the Chargers possibilities. But Dane Brugler has 10 edge rushers in his top 50, and I kind of feel the same way. We saw last night, if you watched the game, JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State, I think is the superior Ohio State edge rusher. But some people do also like Jack Sawyer, the opposite player from him. There's Josiah Stewart from Michigan, who the Chargers could take, but he's kind of more of a, DPR type. He's like 240 pounds and like 6'1.5", maybe. So there's types all across the board. James Pierce, my mistake. I don't know why I said Michael Pierce. James Pierce is the edge rusher from Tennessee. So the Chargers, I think, have really good options in terms of edge rushers, but the question is going to be, at one point, do they want to take one of those edge rushers? What kind of type are they looking for? You're not going to find a rookie edge rusher to instantly replace Khalil Mack, right? And I think the Chargers would have to, at that point, consider, is the room of Thule, Bud Dupree, Joey Bosa, and a rookie, what are you really getting from that room? I think is the question that they'll have to ask. And if Khalil does come back, it's the same kind of thing. So
yeah,
I think the edge rusher class is fantastic. I think there are good options to pair with. If you're looking for a traditional designated pass rusher type, there's a lot of them. If you're looking for like an edge one at 22, you're probably not getting that guy. But Mike Green, I think, could potentially become that player. So the pass rushers, I think right now, the edge rushers is the best group in the draft, because I think you have first round talents. I think you have top 10 talents. I think you have second round talents. Defensive tackle, I think, is really, really good at the top. From what I've seen, I've only watched like 6 defensive tackles, but I've already kind of gotten to a little bit of a drop off. Running back might be right up there as well. But to me, edge rusher is the group that has the most depth that the Chargers could potentially choose from.
So considering the Walker class, which you and I were both not huge fans of him, and definitely not number 1 overall over Aiden Hutchinson fans, that's for sure.
No.
But looking at that class, that 2022 class, I know it's very early for you, and there's no testing, no Senior Bowl, got to watch more film. So that class had Hutchinson, Thibodeau, Jermaine Johnson, Ojabo, Walker.
Yeah, that class was awesome. That class was awesome.
Are we feeling that is this class close-ish to that? Outside of maybe not having the better 1-2 that was Hutchinson, Thibodeau, or I guess Walker, Thibodeau, or Walker, Hutchinson.
Well, I had a job upgraded pretty highly in that class also.
Yeah.
Fortunately has not worked out there. Man, that's tough. I don't think this group has a Hutchinson where like right away I felt like he could walk into the league and get double-digit sacks. Abdul Carter is a freak of all freaks, but I do have some questions about his instant impact. I think long term, like he could be one of those guys.
Yeah.
Sholo Man pointing out Landon Jackson from Arkansas. I have not watched him yet, but he is on my list. So there, like I said, this is a great depth class. I don't know outside of Abdul Carter how many of these guys are true like 80, 90 pressures and 12 sack guys across their career. But I think there's a lot of players who could be, 55 to 70 pressures and 8 sack guys for their careers. I think there's just there's a lot of those guys.
That's really good to hear. That's good.
Yeah. So if Khalil does leave, I think that how does that change things for Joey Bosa for you? Because $36 million cap hit, he's not worth it. I don't think it's tenable. I think they would have to do something to that contract. But if Khalil leaves, are you keeping Joey Bosa around?
I am not, unless they do something where they cut him, heavy restructure or whatever it is, and that contract is completely different.
Yeah.
No, sorry. I just, whereas if you let Khalil Mack walk because you're worried about any bit of his future and his production and availability, you can't keep Joey Bosa. That you can't turn around and keep Joey Bosa on his contract. We tried the potential thing. I mean, I was out on him this past season, like the previous off season.
You were.
So I'm just, but I kind of get it. You believe in your system. You believe in Ben Herbert, your rehabilitation of these, the bodies and helping these guys get to their best selves. And it just did not materialize with Joey Bosa this year. And his numbers aren't there. The game against the Raiders to open the season was phenomenal.
So good.
And that was mostly it. He had a couple of, good showings, but that guy,
he was really good in the playoff game. I will say that.
That's fair. Which may definitely help some things because he was, you're right. He was very good in that playoff game. So that may help some things, but if they move on from Khalil, I think you just not start fresh because you have Thule and Dupree, but I think you just figure it out in the draft and then you take someone in round one.
Man, probably. So you're talking about Thule, Bud, a round one rookie, and I think at that point you would have to sign somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is that not that you don't need good edge rushers because like that, obviously that'd be great to have good edge rushers. This defense didn't exactly need elite production from their edge rushers this year.
Yeah, Michigan or this year, yeah.
Also true. So I'm not that I'm trying to cheapen out on Jesse Minter here. The guy does definitely need some higher end talent for bigger moments in the postseason, but I think you kind of could get it done with an edge rusher, Thule, assigning Bud Dupree. If this class is as deep as you say it is, draft another guy, whatever. But if Khalil's not back, Joey's gone to me regardless. I think he just has to be gone regardless.
Yeah. Man, I don't know, man. I think Bud Dupree is a really good run defender. So I think there is some value in keeping him around. But I don't know, man. I do not trust him as a potential edge too, and increasing his snap count is not something I'm very interested in. So I think there is an argument to be had where if Khalil decides to retire, I think you just include Bud Dupree in that clean sweep and you just completely overhaul your edge room. I would not be opposed to that at all. Maybe that's a Josh Sweat signing. Maybe also bring in Baron Browning for cheap. And then you draft somebody else in the first round too. And then you just completely change over your edge rusher room. But that's really into the weeds of things. Because you're right. I think this free agency pass rusher group is not great. Khalil being the top edge rusher is cool for Khalil. It's not very good for the edge rusher. And that's not, abnormal, right? Like edge rusher, quality pass rushers generally do not hit the market. And Josh Sweat might not hit the market. I mean, the Eagles are going to lose Brandon Graham. Bryce Huff has been, a disaster for them. So the Chargers, if they lose Khalil Mack, are going to have to be creative and probably committee this thing. And you sign a couple people and you draft somebody early, and just try and take multiple chances at the board. And obviously you got to hope that Thule takes a big step forward as well.
Yeah, Thule would definitely have to. I think you hold on to Dupree if you cut both. It's a $3.6 million contract this year.
Yeah,
like if you go full scorched earth with all three, it's kind of hilarious. I'd be gay. I'd have to start watching some Edge film. I'll tell you that. I wouldn't have zero anymore. But I think you would have to at least keep Bud Dupree. He's not.
Yeah,
you save 2.6 mil. You could have 100 million to spend.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think if you lose the two guys, you can go get a DPR like Baron Browning, and then you take one in the first round. That's not the worst thing in the world. Gavino Borges in the chat. Appreciate Gavino in here. He says, "What's up, y'all? Princely, Unman Bielen, Donovan Eziraku, I think is how I've heard it said, from Boston College. Kyle Kennard, Josiah Stewart, and Antoine Powell-Ryland are some dudes. The Boston College edge rusher from Donovan, I think, is an early leader for like most overhyped prospect that I've studied so far. He is small and very fast. That is it. So people are talking about him in the first round. I do not see it. But I appreciate Gavino's mentioning here.
Cool. Yeah, we'll definitely watch those guys eventually.
Okay, Thomas Martinez says I got the name right on the first try. So
what is it?
Eziraku?
Oh, okay, Eziraku.
Yeah,
there's some good names in this class. We have a stack house at defensive tackle. Like it's just phenomenal.
Great names. As Thomas pointed out earlier, it would be really funny for them to draft JT Tuimoloau, and then you would have Tuli Tuipulotu and JT Tuimoloau, and they already can't get Tuli's name right. So pairing that one with Tuli, I think, would be really funny.
They can't even get Fehoko right, so we're screwed. Yeah, it's like, you got to be kidding me, guys.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a great edge rusher class. I think the Chargers have some good options. I haven't really gotten to any like round 3 guys, but the danger for the Chargers is obviously that they're not going to pick until like 58 or whatever their second round pick is. So if they want an edge rusher, they probably got to take one in the first round.
But what about Colston Loveland, man?
Dude, there's a lot of fun first round players.
There are a lot of
is a freak, although he might go earlier. I mentioned Jahdae Barron from Texas recently. That's a fun guy I like a lot. So he's like the only corner I've watched so far, but I've been a big fan of his. So yeah,
cool. Cool.
All right, camp implications and predictions here. So again, the Chargers 2025 cap space, they currently have $63.05 million according to Over the Cap. That is after the rollover accounts from the past season. They could cut Joey Bosa, and that number would go up to $88.41 million. They could cut Trey Pipkins, that would go up to $95.16. The Chargers basically have a lot of cap space to work with, and I think we'll see them spend. I mean, they have 44 people on the roster, so they got to spend. I put this prediction in here, and so I want to see what your thoughts here, maybe in the chat as well. My prediction is that he would sign a 2-year, $30 million contract that would put him at edge 19 on the market, and that would essentially be a gap, like I mentioned, of his pre-existing $19 million cap hit from this past season, and where, generally speaking, like the edge rushers of his age have been. So it's not a slap in the face, although his agent might think otherwise. It's a good contract for a player of his caliber. It's a good contract for somebody who's potentially considering retiring. Maybe this could get up to a 2-year, $35 million contract, but to me, I think we see an APY under 20, and I think it's kind of taking into consideration, he has considered retiring. There has been kind of a dip in production. So to me, looking at the history of that position and his age, I think 2 years, $30 million seems pretty fair to both sides, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the age thing is obviously a big factor there. Him coming in at the APY of an edge 19, I don't think is really going to happen. I think he does get north of this. So I'm thinking more like closer to 20 than 15, I guess. So I'm very bad at these things. We used to have a guy who was very good at these things.
Yeah.
I don't think that 15 is where he ultimately settles on. I think it'll be somewhere north of that. You get yourself to around like 18, so you've now passed Huff and Highsmith and Landry,
Sure.
but you're still outside of the top 10. I think that's probably more where I'm thinking he'd end up being. He might not see this. So the APY might be whatever it is. He might have year one cap hit 12 million, year two cap hit 20 million, or whatever it ends up being. He might not see that second one. I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. But yeah, I think he ends up with more like a 17, 18 million.
That is fair. That is fair. I think 15 is probably the floor then.
Yeah, I think that if you're looking at the guys we just mentioned in their seasons, I mean, you guys at like 10 million, 11 million, 12 million, I think that he should start a significant portion ahead of that. So yeah, I think 15 would be a good starting point. Hopefully the Chargers get it done sooner than later, because if Chase Young signs, so this isn't our projection for him, but yeah, Chase Young at 17.5 million per year. Granted, he is younger. That kind of starts becoming more of your floor, because Mack is the number one edge free agent right now.
Yeah. Josh Sweat at $18 million per year is insane to me. Malcolm Kuntz.
Yeah.
Malcolm Kuntz at 18.75. I guess I can kind of justify, because his numbers before the injury were like that of a guy who was truly making a leap forward.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, being younger does not equal being better. So Josh Sweat and Chase Young making that much, I think, is a little rich for my taste. But it's not my money, I guess.
Yeah, do whatever you want, guys.
All right. So that is going to do it for us in terms of the Khalil Mack conversation. Did you have any final thoughts there?
No, I just think we're both in agreement that's probably a 2-year deal, and we both do believe that he will be back.
Yeah. Free agency is, I think, 2 months away, less than 2 months. So
yeah,
I would love to see this deal get done sooner rather than later, like you mentioned. The combine is a few short weeks away, so hopefully we get some movement there, and would love to get that contract done before free agency even starts. So you guys here in the chat, in the comments, let us know what you think about that conversation. Do you think Khalil is coming back? What contract? Whatever you want to mention, we'll jump into the comments and discuss it with you. All right, let's get to some of these super chats and questions, and then we'll head out for today. Gary Rockwell started us off. He says, if we re-sign Fulton, Molden, and Mack, will that give us enough depth to look at tight end in the first round? If we re-sign Fulton, Molden, and Mack, will that give us enough depth to
defensive back? I think it's like a defensive back depth specifically.
Yeah.
Okay, so Molden's back. Fulton's your starter. It's probably one of Tariq Hill or Cam Hart as your other starter.
Yeah.
We'll see what they do in the slot, but you're probably not taking a slot corner in round one. I mean, I guess you could take an outside corner round one here too, but if you're bringing back Fulton, that's probably your guy. I still don't think so. I think you have to buy the right to get a tight end in round one. Not that Loveland isn't worth the selection, but the team's not there, I think, with that just yet. So I think you have to buy the right to get there. So get a right guard. I still don't love that corner room, but I said that going into this year, and it works just fine. I don't know. I still think they really need a guy at corner, an actual legit starter at corner, even if there's some growing pains this year. There's too many corners walking in and doing some pretty good stuff right now. Gotta find your guy. You just can't, with the guys they're facing next year, you cannot roll out the same corners.
Man, corner is such a tough spot, because we just talked about they're potentially needing an edge rusher in the first round. And tight end, if you want a legit tight end 1, you probably got to take him in round 1 also. So
yeah, this class ain't it. I feel misled.
I also feel misled at tight end. The class is like fine.
Yeah.
I think you have 2 legitimate first round prospects with Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland. Warren to me has settled into tight end 1, but I think Colston Loveland, all due respect to my guy Dalton Kincaid, I think I view him as like a Kincaid plus then some.
Yes.
I think there's a little bit more juice there, and there's definitely more blocking there from what I've seen.
100%.
So I think you have 2 difference makers, but outside of that, I think you're taking projects, you're taking guys with capped ceilings, and trying to figure out specific roles to put them in. And it's definitely possible. Every single year, there's an athletic freak tight end who hits and looks good. But then there's also guys who are athletic freaks who don't even make it to day 2 and are never a thing in the league. So
yeah,
tight end is tricky in general. But what I know about that position and this offense is that you need a difference maker. And so I still think Colson Loveland is probably priority number 1 for me, assuming Tyler Warren is not on the board.
sure.
And then you figure things out elsewhere. And that might include edge rusher, that might include corner. So it's a very tricky year for a first round pick to try and peg down where the Chargers are going to be selecting. But there's nothing like Colson Loveland in free agency. There just isn't. I think you can go find some decent edge options and corner options in free agency. Definitely can find some offensive line options in free agency. But there's nothing like Colson Loveland walking through the door in free agency. And that includes if guys get cut. If that includes if you want to go trade for somebody. All due respect to Mark Andrews, man. I don't know how interested I am in that, right? Because I think aside from the drop, his yards per route run plummeted this year from previous seasons, and it seems like he is kind of starting to hit the cliff, unfortunately for him.
Yeah, it's not like he's in an offense that isn't working or his quarterback's no good.
Yeah.
We're not,
and it's not tight end friendly. It's extremely tight end friendly.
Yeah, no, we're not going to do the whole like, oh, now he's got a real quarterback and a real offense. They're like, we're not doing that thing. If Andrews comes to the Chargers,
No.
I've been joking about Andrews to the Chargers in terms of trade, but if he's cut, I'm all for it because like he'd be much less expensive. But on his current deal, it's a little pricey.
Yeah, I agree. Trading for him, I'm not particularly interested in. All right, next one here from our guy Athir. I think was just a super chat, but let me try and find if there was a comment attached to it.
The next comment was give Mack and Thule ready to roll.
Okay, so he's in favor of those 2 guys being your starters. If Khalil's back, the Chargers have a lot more flexibility, right? And they could go draft a Josiah Stewart in round 2. They could go draft a designated pass rusher type in round 2, round 3, and you feel good about it. So that would definitely give the Chargers more flexibility from the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Cruz says K-Mac needs to come back. We are just getting started. And if any coach can get Herbo right, it is Harbaugh.
Yeah, I would love, and I think he will be back. Ultimately, we believe he'll be back. I don't think you sign up for the whole regime change just to bail and go elsewhere. Like this is it. This is probably his best opportunity. It's a great defense. It's a well-coached team, well-coached defense. They're going to be able to pay you a significant amount. It's not like they're cap strapped and begging for an $8 million per year contract. Like they are going to be able to pay him pretty well. And yeah, I think he sticks around. I mean, he's invested so much of himself into this team and taking the team to dinners, rallying the defense, even last year, just doing anything he can. I think you want to see that investment pay off this year, and I think it will.
Yeah, I completely agree there. Apologies for the thing that's flashing behind my head. That is the ceiling fan and the poster reflection. So I will get that fixed. I'll just move my head. But also, it's Steven with a V, please, and thank you. That is something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
had just a simple one from Anthony Navarro with a heart and a lightning bolt. That is a very handsome, cute bulldog in your picture. Bulldogs are fantastic pets, and that's a great profile picture.
Adorable.
James De Leon wants to know if we think K13 Slayer is coming back, and he says, "Love y'all." We appreciate that, James.
Probably not. I mean, I don't know if the Bears what they're going to end up doing over there, but it's not a bad situation with their new head coach. You know, if he doesn't want to uproot his family and go figure out something else somewhere else, and he doesn't want to have to go live somewhere else. So, although I think his family lives over here, but I think I don't think he's back with the Chargers. Unfortunately, it would be awesome. I would love to see it. You don't have to worry about chemistry issues. But I think he's over there or somewhere else.
Yeah, I love Keenan. He's one of my favorite Chargers of all time, but I am not particularly interested.
I saw a graph or whatever it was, some sort of figure today that showed the biggest jump in separation score between last year to this year. Keenan was a drop in that regard. He was one of the 5 worst. Quentin Johnston was actually number 1 in increase from last year to this year.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means it's a good number, but it was the biggest step forward.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot better for Quentin this past season. So he ranked. Where's he at? It's not a good sign that I have to scroll this far, but it's good for him. So he was 78th and had an open score of 54, which is a significant improvement for him in terms of open score. Let's look at Keenan. Okay, so Keenan's open score last season in 2023 was 91. His open score in 2024 for the Bears was 57.
That's brutal.
Yeah. Something that Daniel Popper has talked about a lot is the Chargers need to be much better at, getting open versus man coverage and making plays versus man coverage. And that was kind of their big weakness in terms of the receiver room, which makes sense, right? Keenan Allen averaged his worst ever yards per route run against man coverage in 2024. So you can talk to me about the fit in Chicago, the quarterback play in Chicago not being great. I do think that we have seen signs of Keenan taking a major step back. And he's always been somebody that has to play the most in the slot. And that's what Ladd McConkey does. So I just a lot of people are questioning, well, they should sign so and so, they should sign so and so. I think Chris Godwin would be great, but again, he plays the majority of his snaps in the slot, which is where Ladd plays. So we've got to be talking about an outside receiver, and that's not Keenan, it's not Chris Godwin, it's not Tyreek Hill, all that stuff. So I love Keenan Allen. He is one of my favorite Chargers of all time. I don't think it makes sense for the Chargers at all to bring him back right now.
So we sort of mentioned this yesterday. Are you out on Egbuka in the first round if he's there?
I'm not out because I do think he shows enough level 2 playmaking ability, and he is listed at 6'1". So if he is actually 6'1", which we know players and teams lie about that kind of stuff, but if he is actually 6'1", I think he has enough to at least function as a Z receiver and can give you some level 2, second level production where he doesn't have to be a slot only type, and he could essentially be your Joshua Palmer replacement. And I think that would work. I think the Ravens have shown that they can make Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman work, and I think the Chargers could potentially do the same thing with Ladd and Emeka Egbuka. But we talked a lot about the first round needs and receiver. I don't know, man. It's tough for me to justify that. So I think Egbuka works, and if the Chargers do want a receiver, the second and third round receivers I'm not crazy about right now. So that's part of it too. But I'm mostly trying to find like a legit boundary receiver that can play alongside Ladd. And I know the fan base is very much out on Quentin Johnson, but he's going to be on the team. And I think the Chargers would be wise to try and make that work a little bit, even if he is your wide receiver 3. So I'm specifically looking for somebody that majors in being an outside receiver, not can do it from time to time. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So what they theoretically were trying to get from DJ Chark,
Yes.
who then lost in the playoffs and posted himself holding the joint. Which, hey, do you. Just posting it is kind of hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, people ask me about Cooper Kupp. It's a little more doable, but not my favorite either. All right. I think that is it for the super chats. Any questions in the chat that stood out to you?
Yeah, one really quick. Just we do get this question quite a bit, and I cannot find it. Here we go from Michael Flores. Maybe a dumb question. It's not a dumb question. When you guys watch a prospect, where are you watching on YouTube? I would like to watch prospects myself. So go to Caddy's Cutups on Patreon. I think that's the easiest way for anyone to get started. I don't recall where the membership is at now per month, but I think it's maybe $5 a month to get access to film that has not everything, but it has cut-ups of film. And you can go find a player. Let's say you want to watch Egbuka, and they'll have all his clips and his snaps from a particular game or set of games. And they'll have a yellow arrow over that player for all of his reps. Some like 1% of the time it's not there or it's the wrong player, but otherwise it's pretty good. So you'll get right now 2 to 3 games per player. Not everything right now is up to date.
Yeah.
I would definitely start with that. That's the easiest one. Then we do have a separate drive with other games on it. I've been spending a lot of time in there actually, because there's not a ton on caddies right now. It's really helped find some of these more like niche games or like bigger games against opponents that like weren't just Ohio State and Michigan, because you'll get Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State. I'm sure that all the games are there. But if you're looking for like Kent State,
Marshall.
or Kansas State, Marshall, for example, yeah, definitely, you'll have to go. So we use those. So YouTube's definitely not bad. YouTube's fine for certain things. Just don't watch receivers, defensive backs on YouTube. You can't see anything.
Yeah. Past 10 yards, obviously the broadcast angle doesn't count anything. Yeah. So County's Cutups, I think, is the right place to start. Unfortunately, college film is like black market level stuff. Like
It's so weird.
It's so annoying. And then the other thing that anybody who wants to get into this business of cutting up clips and tweeting and talking about these draft prospects is that there are certain schools who will file copyright complaints against you if you tweet out like too many clips of their players, because they think that they're like, legally obligated to protect the film and the honor of their film watching experience. I don't know. It's super weird. There's also the company that produces the majority of college tape that coaches watch has like it is like Fort Knox to try and get tape from certain schools. So be very careful about posting or talking about some of these clips, because those schools and company will go after you if you do it too often. So it's really frustrating that there's not just like an NFL Plus version for college tape that everybody could gain access to and everybody could watch players and talk about. But yeah, so Caddy's Cutups is the easiest way. And then, because we have some connections around, college football, we're able to gain a little bit more access, but Caddy's Cutups is a good start.
Yeah, it is. I don't know why they don't. $100, $200 for all college film
makes no sense to me.
If you told, I would hate to pay it initially, but if you told me you can have access to everything right now for $300, I probably would spend that, honestly.
Yeah, it makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
Ridiculous that the NCAA is not doing this. Granted, not the smartest group of decision makers over there at the NCAA. They've got a lot of mess going on in college football.
Yeah, whole disaster.
Yeah. All right, we just got a couple super chats in here. From Gary said he didn't mean to imply that Mac was a DB, but he'd be the most intimidating one in NFL history. You're good. I think we got to your question eventually. But yeah, Khalil playing a defensive back would be funny.
Oh yeah, no, I'd love to see that for sure. Did he have a pick this year? Poona Ford had the pick.
Poona Ford had a pick, and Tier Tart had a pick, which he fumbled. I don't think Khalil had a pick. How many picks has he had?
I don't know. Side note, everybody watch Alfred Collins, the defensive tackle from Texas. His mother was an awesome D1 player, basketball player for Texas, and it made a ton of sense when I found that out because he bats down passes like I wouldn't believe.
Really?
Right. Yeah. No, he'll sidestep into the throwing lane, bats on a pass. I watched 4 games. He had 5 pass breakups or 5 batted passes. 2 of them, I think 3 of them went for picks. Just like I'm sure his mom showed him as a basketball player.
Yeah. And you mentioned something else about him that I don't know if you want to mention, but you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. If it's small things, but Alfred Collins was recruited to Notre Dame by Mack Elston. Some of the things I'm doing this year, if you're on my Patreon page, you already have this. I'm putting did Michigan offer them, and is there a coaching connection to this player? So sometimes it's like they transferred from a place, or they were recruited by this individual, or obviously they have some sort of connection to. I mean, there's some obvious ones: Notre Dame, Michigan, obvious coaching connection to some of those. But then you have Penn State from 2020, or you have Virginia Tech or Tennessee. Trey, not that this is a draft player, but like Trey Smith was at Tennessee when I forgot his name. He was a grad assistant there. Muschamp
would have been at Tennessee, yeah.
Yeah. So just stuff like that. So if you want to, link in the description, Patreon page, plenty of stuff there. So yes, Mike Elston recruited Alfred Collins, great family guy. You go to his page, he's just doing charity work, close to his mom. Clearly, mom was a D1 basketball player. Just some stuff I like to find as you're digging more into players that you do like watching on film.
Yeah, I mean, we saw them last year take advantage of their specific connections. Obviously, Cam Hart, Target Still, Junior Colson.
Yep.
Were they connected to Eboigbe? I don't think so.
No, outside of, Horty's in Alabama is kind of a connection, but that's not a new connection.
Yeah, true. But yeah, good stuff over there on Tyler's Patreon page. Dark Samus with his usual offensive line comment. We appreciate the commitment. Not Booker. This is for Jared Wilson. Might be the 3rd offensive lineman to run a 4.7. Yes, he is very, very athletic. The center from Georgia.
Yeah, that was missing a lot for the Chargers this year. Sometimes Bozeman could not execute because he just was not that guy physically, which is not the worst thing, but it was poetry to watch Disley, Zion, Slater, and how well they could move and how well they were, and just Bozeman, get there, and just couldn't quite.
Yeah. All right. That is going to do it for us tonight. We appreciate you guys for tuning in live, for watching us on a replay. Make sure like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff does help continue to grow the show. We'll be back on Thursday for the J.K. Dobbins version of this episode. So it should be very interesting. He is featured in Pro Football Focus's top 75 free agents as well. That was a recent update for them. So should be a fun conversation there. We mentioned it a little bit earlier today. Great running back draft class. And so should be an interesting conversation then. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll see you guys next time. As always, bolt up.